Welcome to the School of Bravery. My name is Emily Ann Peterson, and I am the host of the podcast. We are with Kate Fontana right now, and she is one of our awesome guest faculty members and a student and a client of mine. And I'm just so excited that we get to have her here with us today because this month in the school, we're focusing on Defiant Expectation. And I am so proud of Kate for being who she is, just in general. But also specifically, she is like a super rad social justice chick who does so not from a place of, this is just my witness. I'm witnessing, I'm testifying, witnessing what it's been like to watch you in the last, however long we've known each other. The way that you show up as an advocate and an activist is very soft and gentle, but also firm. So I admire you for that greatly. So we're going to talk a little bit about Defiant Expectation today. And we're also going to talk about some of the awesome, fun things that Kate has been up to. So let's start there. I'll have you, because this is something that we do in the school, in our community forum from time to time, we do bravery brags. So I'll have Kate, why don't you give us a bravery brag on yourself, or like several bravery brags on some things that you have done that have been like acts of defiant expectation in the last year or several years. I don't know. You can just brag on yourself about defiant expectation for us.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I think the place to start feels like the bravery brag is my willingness to do a bravery brag. That feels like the first one that comes to mind, because it's like, I think my conditioning would have told me that that's like being, like self-promoting, or like you're gonna make other people feel bad. You're just like, yeah, like it's not that's unchristian or whatever it is, to like, it's self-focused, and I do feel like it's taken me practice, and I am building the skill of like, yeah, I fucking did that, and that was rad. And that was hard, and I can be proud of it, and I can receive affirmation for that. So anyway, that just felt like that was in front of me, as you were saying.
Totally. Well, I mean, that's why we do it, because I know that one, the school exists so that we can practice being brave together in a safe place. And that is definitely a thing that I know has helped me, is to get more comfortable bragging on myself, or more comfortable talking about the things that I have accomplished in not a bashful way, or in not a I don't want to shine, or I don't want to outshine other people, or the tall poppy syndrome, that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing the Lizzo line, like, if I'm shiny, everybody gonna shine,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, Lizzo knows.
Yeah. So, I think in light of that, like, one of the things I feel really proud of, that's having kind of a an echo effect right now during pandemic, like, so the last 3 years I've been in seminary, and as an undergraduate I was really unwell. Like, I was really on the outside was very successful, like very high achieving, very academic, like kind of your, I don't know, your classic overachiever. And on the inside, I was like very sleep deprived. I ate very like sporadically. I had trouble with it, like building really sustainable friendships. It was just like a hard period of time that I was able to mask really well in like over functioning academia and do-gooding. And so like I remember as I was getting ready to start seminary, I could feel the anxiety in me and like my body tension around like, are we really gonna go do that again? Are we gonna put ourselves through that again? Yes, I talk about myself in the third person sometimes. There's many me's. And I remember my body being like, okay, we will consent to this, but it cannot be the way that it was. And I was able to kind of make some agreements like, okay, these are, we're gonna go to school again, and we're not gonna do it at the expense of like my well-being and my sleep and just the things that I have spent like 10 years learning to take better care of. And over the past 3 years, I feel like for the most part, I've taken really good care of myself and like been able to be just a normal achieving person, which is, yeah, I mean, I'm sensitive to like the ways that my kind of like the ways that my dysfunction has manifested is very socially acceptable and like has good I get a lot of validation for it. So like, but it's actually often in the past has not been from like a whole place. So it takes a lot of self regulation, right?
Well, I think there's a lot to the people who choose, because it's a choice, the people who choose to battle burnout with caring for themselves in a real like it takes a lot of persistence and boundaries, and it's not easy is not the right word. It takes effort.
Yeah.
Right. It can be easy. You can learn how it can feel easy eventually, but it's going to take effort. And there's just a lot of defiant expectation that comes from choosing to put those boundaries in place. Like, I'm going to get 8 hours of sleep, or I'm going to go back to grad school, and it is going to feel different.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It just is. It's going to be different. Like,
yeah, right. It was kind of like one of my teachers talks about like stress is the new crack. I mean, it's not even new anymore. It's like the old new crack. And I had to really decide I wasn't going to like be a part of that like camaraderie of stressed out grad student. I mean, and I am sometimes still too. It's not like, yeah, but like, I didn't feel like I had to buy into that. And in some ways it was like a little lonely.
How so?
Well, just like I could tell how a lot of bonding happens around that stress and around over functioning. Mm-hmm. And like it was a learning curve for me. It has been a learning curve for me in my life to be like, oh no, it's actually a radical thing in like capitalist imperialist workaholic West. It is a radical thing to do less. Mm-hmm. And
that is one thing I've noticed in advocating for the students in the School of Bravery, like, because I'm all the time saying like, why are you making it so hard on yourself? Or like,
Yeah.
let's automate this. Let's make it into a template so that you never have to do this thing again. And then the light bulb moment of, oh my gosh, you're right. I would have done this 45 million times had you not stepped in and said, let's make a template so that you can just copy and paste every single time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good.
And it's those kinds of like little tweaks that can make it really, really easy. You really just don't, like, I've had some people say like, how are you so organized, to me, like, how are you so organized, or how are you getting so much done? And my answer is usually like, I have a lot, I have high standards for myself. I have a lot of things I want to get done. There's not a lot of time to get it done. So the only way that I'm going to get it done is if I'm organized.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I have chronic illnesses. Sometimes I have, like seasonal depression. Life happens, like you can't control what happens, like a pandemic. So you also need to like be flexible enough to be able to like take a day.
Yeah.
And all of that combined means I get tired and I eventually will just want to do everything the easiest way possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's reminding me of like, this was years ago, but a friend of mine, so one of the things that I don't do professionally, but I have done for years is I sing. And I used to teach yoga and I'd sing people out of Shavasana, and like people, I had one student in particular who was like, you need to make an album. You are robbing the world of your gift. You have to do this. And eventually they paid for recording time in a studio. And I finally, like, it took me a year, and then I finally went in and I did the recording and like whatever. But I remember through that whole process, I was just like, this is just something I do. It's not hard for me. It's just, and I think in it not being hard, I equated that with it not being worth anything. And like, it took this whole journey with this album, and then like bringing it out to my community, and like them being like, we love this and we can't do this, like you're the one who does this, and so yes, we want to pay you for this, or we want to support you to do this. And it finally clicked, like, oh, I equate blood, sweat, and tears with worth. And then I was like, oh, that's capitalist bullshit.
Yeah. Okay. And then the flip side of that with bravery that I have noticed, and that I say all the time, is that people will wrongly assume that their feat of bravery needs to feel hard.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that if it doesn't feel hard, it's not brave.
Mm-hmm.
And that if they're not like sacrificing themselves or martyring themselves on the altar of their tasting their successive dreams or whatever, then it's not brave.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not risking your life to save someone in a burning building, then that's not bravery.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And that's bullshit too.
No, for sure. I mean, I think I'm connecting it back to this time with the music, but in the sense of like, I was kind of like, well, it's no big deal. I just do this thing. And they're like, no, yeah, that is a big deal to us. Like, so me, even just as we're preparing for today, you were like, you just get to be yourself. And I'm like, great, I can do that. That sounds perfect. And at the same time, it's like, it has taken, there has been it's taken effort to get to a place of being at ease, just showing up as myself and doing the things I know how to do, and being okay with the limits of what that is. And
And you're probably experiencing new levels of it too.
Yeah.
You know, like, or subtle levels of it.
Yeah.
Because it's like peeling an onion or a banana, whatever you want to peel.
Yeah.
There's another layer under
The
there.
parfait. Yeah.
Well, okay, so let's continue the bravery brags because we didn't get to the things that I wanted you to brag about.
Okay.
So tell me what you're up to right now, or what you just recently accomplished, or
Yeah. Okay. So my most recent bravery brag is that I just submitted, finally, after I think it's been about 3 years. I submitted my last piece of paperwork to be considered a candidate for ordination with the Roman Catholic women priests. So yeah, I know. The last piece was this like extensive psych eval, which I'm glad they do, and it was very thorough. And I learned I'm not the Myers-Briggs that I thought I was, but it was so fulfilling to just finally send that in, and that's just to be now considered a candidate. So there still may be 1 to 3 years of discernment and other steps in the candidacy process, but that's a big chunk that I have been working on for a long time.
No, because I know that you and I have discussed spiritual things before.
Yeah.
So Kate is a spiritual advisor of all kinds, and she is just has a wealth of experience amongst different types of spiritual faiths. And that's one of the reasons why I think she's an excellent person to seek out advice for spiritual conundrums, because she has a lot of knowledge from all of these like fingers of spirituality. Can you talk to me a little bit about why you came, because you grew up Catholic, is that what I understand?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you have now gone full circle.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
And now you're back home.
Yeah, kind of. So yeah, I was raised Catholic. I had a love-hate there, which many former Catholics or current Catholics can relate to, or Christians even. And I left the church for probably about 10 years, towards the end of my college years, and got really into yoga and Eastern mysticism, and still had a deep spirituality, a consistent meditation practice, was really interested in like goddess and divine feminine spirituality, was very connected to nature and earth-based spirituality, is very kind of just seeking a lot in those years, and then had kind of it was kind of like a literal come to Jesus moment. Like I had this experience, which I won't go in depth about because I have a whole blog post about it I can share. But yeah, I felt like what for me was a presence of unconditional love that was familiar to me by the name of Jesus, which I believe shows up in many traditions throughout time and history as by other names. But I felt visited, and in that visitation had this like, I don't know, call back to the church. I was kind of like, what the fuck? And yeah, I mean, I was both like, I felt both like immense relief and peace and so much like connection. Like a lot of pieces of my story kind of fell into place. And at the same time, I was like, no. And it took me several years to like kind of come to terms with that. And a calling, I don't know.
Let me ask you this, like, how have you seen Defiant Expectation play a role in that full circle?
Yeah. Well, what comes to mind first is like, I I feel the defiant expectation of the divine towards me. Like, you thought you were done with us, and we're saying not yet. and and that there was an expectation like returned to me, that in a way, I mean, it reminded me that not in a like submissive way, but in a like right relationship way. It reminded me that I'm just one body in the ecosystem of bodies that makes up the cosmos. And 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 I'm not ultimately in control. And at the time I was oriented towards my life as if I were ultimately in control. And I didn't even realize it until I experienced kind of the relief of not having to hold it that way. And so I think, yeah, like I can feel the attitude of the divine or the cosmos or the universe as kind of unveiling impossibilities. And I'm thinking right now about, so I've been reading Adrienne Marie Brown's Emergent Strategy, and she talks about like science fiction. She's a science fiction writer, and that science fiction is a way to like just play with impossibility and like imagine the gateways opening to it. And like I think in my imagination there was no way I could return to the church and still be a whole person. That's something.
And why is that?
Because I'm a queer woman in a archaic, patriarchal, homophobic institution that is, yeah, like that.
There's the meat and potatoes. Like
right.
that's that's the reason why I wanted you to like take that lid off. I was like, I want her to take the lid off of that, because when I think of defiant expectation, and I know who you are, I know that you are a queer woman who has had some history with Christianity. And I know you are in seminary.
Yeah.
And I know that you have been pursuing this Roman Catholic priesthood. Is that how you said the ordination Roman Catholic?
Yep.
I don't know the right phrase.
Yeah, it's okay. The movement is called the Roman Catholic Women Priests. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
You've been pursuing that. So those things don't match up.
Right.
So anytime I see someone, and this is like a challenge to you, if you're looking out at your people or your community and wondering like where is defiant expectation amongst my community? A lot of times if you see someone who has these polar opposites in their personality type or like in their interests or things like that, those polar opposites usually point to the fact that there is some sort of defiant hope that the two can exist, the two categories can exist together in one person. Or in your case, it is possible to be a whole person in a broken institution.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what that evokes for me is like, I mean, I have felt that so much in my life. Like the things that I experience on the inside, I don't see reinforced in the world on the outside. And as I'm hearing you say that right now, and just thinking about all the sci-fi I read, it feels like we're time travelers, like the ones who hold defiant expectation that we have like some kind of time traveling capability to be like, okay, you don't know this yet, but this can happen. And we're like ambassadors of the future to tell you that that this can happen, and that what you think is impossible is just a matter of like time and perspective. And yeah, I mean, I feel I have felt mostly burdened by that, but I feel excited about it in the moment right now.
Good. I'm glad, because what I was going to say is that the fact that people have to grow up, and this is like gender, sexuality, this is like any sort of like not belonging, right? If you have to grow up in a world where you don't belong, maybe you grew up in a family of immigrants in the US and we treat immigrants terribly,
Right.
you know, or like outsiders. Even if you, like, let's say you moved from the Northwest to the South when you were in 3rd grade, like you probably were an outsider, or vice versa. You probably felt like an outsider of some sort. That who you are on the inside, I'm trying to restate what you said. Who you are on the outside was not validated by everyone else. Wait, who you are on the inside is not validated by everyone else on the outside. That can feel so hard. And when and it makes our bravery, everyone else's collective bravery, that much more important. As long as that still happens in the world, that people's insides aren't validated on the outside as well. So, you know, when you start to doubt, like, this project or this creative thing that I'm doing is not, you know, like, oh, nobody's going to want to do this thing, or why is this, you know, why would I ever follow through with this thing? I like the most like motivating thing for me and for a lot of the clients that I've worked with has been like, no, let's get really clear. Who is sitting at home right now waiting on you to finish that thing?
Yeah.
Like, they're waiting to get that email saying it's ready.
Yeah.
Because somebody is, and they need you to like put it out there in the world, you know?
Yeah.
And that happens for authors or musicians, or, you know, and I know you are doing, you are launching and getting excited about putting the party hats on for Sanctuary Northwest, which is, I'll let you talk about that in a little bit too. But I think that, you know, somebody's going to find that in 3 years, or maybe even through this podcast episode, and they're going to be like, what? That exists? I've been looking for that forever.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. You know, like, why did she take so long?
Oh, yes.
That was a playful jab for me.
No, that's good. It's very motivating.
No, I want to also mention, like, I've been very strategic about who I've asked to be guest faculty for the school. I really appreciate Kate's perspective as a queer woman in, you know, of faith with all sorts of backgrounds. Janet Haney is she has a master's degree in gerontology and life transitions, and has like a life PhD in grief.
Yeah. Wow.
Losing loved ones. And she's also faith-based in, you know, is Christian and faith-based that way. And then Ashton Sabo, he is our resident yoga teacher, and he's got a whole laundry list of spiritual interests as well. And that, I think it's important to mention that. I think it's important to mention that because when we do something brave, it usually affects our whole personhood.
Yeah.
It's not usually just our career.
Right. Yep.
You know, like doing something brave, even if it's just in our career, it affects who we are as a person, a whole person.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I mean, I've been having to do a lot of writing in seminary this last term about why we do what we do, basically, like our philosophy of ministry and things like that. And what it's reminding me of is like, these are things, I mean, it is motivating for me to know that there's like someone out there waiting for the thing that I'm about to create, and I believe that that's true. And also, like, I'm a 4 on the Enneagram, if that means anything to anyone, but to me, what it means, like, I need to do things so that I feel whole. And like that this is, all the things that are my like labors of love are like things I just can't not do. And because like my spirit wouldn't let me not, you know, and like, I think I feel a sense of defiant expectation in that, like my spirit knowing like you can have an extraordinary life, like you must, like, we and extraordinary can be very ordinary. I mean, this last 6 weeks I've been mostly like taking walks and praying and picking dandelions, and it's felt very extraordinary in the like confined like monotony of it.
Okay, well, you mentioned dandelions, so I want to talk about two things before we close up. So and before we jump into those two things, I will say that Kate is, she's guest faculty for the School of Bravery. She provides us with a monthly meditation that is based around our theme of the month. So like this month is Defiant Expectations. So there is a meditation waiting for the students in the School of Bravery that allows you to just like sink 3 layers deeper into just the theme. And the reason why we thought this would be a good idea is because we wanted to make sure that there's like a solo way for you to practice bravery on a daily basis. Because meditation is a good way to practice that as well. So we'll do a
very
a
brave to just have to sit with yourself.
Ooh, tell me about it.
Yeah.
Especially if you're in isolation in a pandemic.
Woo! Yeah. What a chance.
What a chance, exactly. So we'll when this interview is over, Kate and I are gonna we're gonna record a bonus interview where we'll just go through some of the basics of if meditation is brand new to you, why it's so important and how to kind of get started, and some of the basics on that front, and why it's so crucial for bravery too. We'll kind of jump into that. Okay, but back to Dandelions and Sanctuary Northwest.
Yeah, let me start with Dandelions. They're my most recent little heroes. I mean, I'm not the first one to notice the link between these little plant allies and like the revolution, but I've just like a number of my peers and friends had started harvesting, and I have a lot of herbalist friends who have been doing, and I'm not that's not my field of expertise, but I'm on this property and I just started to notice like what was growing and trying to learn about it. And now that we're in quarantine, I started doing some wild harvesting, and it was so interesting. So a week ago yesterday, I was on a call of like, it was like an international interfaith prayer morning for like folks for the global pandemic. And I happened to get in a breakout room with a Buddhist teacher in Dharamsala, and she had us go through this Buddhist practice called Tonglen meditation, which is shorthand. It's like absorbing. You breathe in and you like take in the harm or the wounds of the world. You take in fear, you take in anger, whatever is showing up. You take it in, and then as you're breathing out, you send out the remedy, like the healing balm. And as a way of like kind of metabolizing or like transmuting the harm or the wounds of the world, the illness. And it's kind of a contrary, or like it's kind of contrary to a lot of more popular forms of meditation where you're like,
yeah,
you don't want to breathe in the bad.
Usually you're breathing in the good stuff and breathing
right.
out the bad stuff.
Yes. So this is like turn that on its head. And I want to say like
which is pretty defiant in and of itself.
Yes. Yes. So we're doing this, and I'm actually also normally not the, again, like I was saying earlier, I'm not the like self-sacrificing type. Like I'm going to take care of myself. And I know that supports a wider ecosystem of care. But this meditation has spoken to me throughout life, and it really resonated with me last week. And then the next day I was out digging dandelions, and I was kind of talking to them, and I was like thanking them as I dug them up. I was like, oh, I'm you dig up the whole plant. You can, because everything is useful. It's like this whole plant giving its whole life, and I'm like thanking it. And then I was meditating the next day. It was the new moon, and the image of the dandelion came to me just like really vividly, and it was like it was doing the Tonglen meditation. It's like absorbing all the harm, and then it's like sending its roots deeper, and its bright little happy flower higher, and then sending out like peace and harmony. And one thing, I don't know the biochemistry that well, but I know they do soil remediation. Like dandelions grow in disturbed places and places where there's heavy metals, and they can like they're part of like reabsorbing toxins, and in humans when we eat them, they're detoxifying and rejuvenating, and anyway, have all these healing properties. So just like the dandelion came to me as this like beautiful little bodhisattva, like we are healing the planet right now, like you're not alone. And we are, absorbing all the fear and all the sickness, and we are sending out like goodwill and health. And it's been staying with me as this symbol of like very humble. I think that's where the Defiant Expectation sort of, it's like we would not expect nobility from a weed, we don't, that's not where we look for our solutions. We look to our leaders and our presidents and the people on top. Like we don't look to the people on the bottom. And I think what we have forgotten in the era of like white supremacy and patriarchy and industrial capitalism and all that, we have mistaken being at the top for being the ones in power, when actually like the sustaining quality of being on the ground, being in the ground, and enduring through hardship, like there is so much power in that. And probably I think we're going to find more and more it's more true to the kind of power that will endure and heal than the power we've mistaken for that like pinnacle top.
Absolutely. And I think, okay, so you are this little parable, we'll use a church word,
Yes.
we'll bring it full circle. This parable is a perfect example of why it's so important to look at your bravery from a holistic perspective, because yes, if you're sitting there meditating or you are seeking growth on a spiritual level, that growth is going to affect you in all areas of your life. Because if you take this message of the dandelion and you're able to say, okay, great. How can I, as a business owner or as a career creative or as somebody who's trying to do something brave in the world, how can I be a dandelion so that I can be more sustainable
Yeah.
during a hard season? And that's going to help you change and pivot and become more sustainable and like help the rest of the ground around you
Yeah.
become more nourishing for
Yes.
everyone else. So and that's part of like becoming a helper and becoming more valuable to everyone else around you, which, you know, it's not always about being more valuable to other people around you, but my point is that like if you are seeking personal growth
Yeah.
in any level, it's going to affect you on all the other levels as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's exactly it. And that's, I mean, that's a good segue if I can go there. Like that's very foundational to the work at the Sanctuary Northwest, and in being able to remember ourselves as members of an ecosystem that requires the thriving of all bodies in the ecosystem for the whole to be well. And yeah, I mean, this is just to shout out, like this is in the lineage of like so many indigenous worldviews, as well as the more recent like emergent strategy work of Adrienne Marie Brown and cultural somatics of Chada Hazumi and others who are working to not just like to not just be a revolution of like putting like putting something else on top, but really to like remember a different way of being with each other and with the earth and with our ancestors that is actually more just and whole and well. And yeah, so that has really informed my work in founding and stewarding the Sanctuary Northwest, which is it's a center.
So first of all, the landscape guys just showed up outside. So if you guys hear an annoying hum, that's what that is. Yeah. So, but who is Sanctuary Northwest for, and what are you aiming to do for those people?
Yeah. So the Sanctuary Northwest is for trauma survivors, which in some ways I believe is all of us, but maybe a more specific group. We seek to address the root causes of trauma, alleviate trauma symptoms, and nurture thriving at individual, communal, and cultural levels. So right now I'd call us a center, even though we don't have a physical location yet. I'm imagining that impossibility into possibility by just naming it and claiming it. But we're a center for holistic trauma resilience and cultural restoration, aiming to transform the lives of trauma survivors for the better and nurture strong, resilient families, communities, and ecosystems where all life thrives. So that's in short.
Yeah. So first of all, I'm going to push back on that the center thing. Your website is the center.
You're right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Especially in a pandemic when no one can go to the center, the physical center anyways. And that's what I think is a lot of brick and mortar businesses are facing these days, is like this defiant expectation that they can still exist even though people aren't physically showing up.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Pretty insane too. Insane in a good way. So speaking of your website, how can people go find out more information about, if that describes them or someone they know, how can they go find out more information about you and what Sanctuary Northwest is doing?
Yeah. So our website is thesanctuarynorthwest.com. And right now we have offerings at 3 levels. I do work individually with, if you're a trauma survivor, a parent, a caregiver, activist, or trauma-related professional. We do what are called somatic resilience sessions. And it's really a way for using body cues and close attention to physical sensation to connect to your inner and outer resources. And from that place of being resourced, listen and like feel for what your next steps are, what you need, and like, yeah, for honing your inner wisdom. So that's kind of the one-on-one work that is probably most accessible right now during this remote community time. And then we also have communal offerings. We do circles and retreats. Right now, we are doing like pretty informal Zoom call circles for just grounding and checking in, community building. And then we also do culture building or cultural restoration work for business owners, nonprofits, pastors who want to make their communities more accessible, more equitable, who want to work through institutional traumas like racism and sexism and ableism and integrate more healthy and holistic practices into their communities. So that's our kind of 3rd tier consulting work.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And then you say we, who is we?
We is mostly me right now, but it is intended as a community project. So
yeah,
yeah, I am also not just me.
yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that your work is really important, and I'm excited to see it unfold and continue. And it's really been cool to see it happen over the last several years.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
I'm a big fan and very proud. And let's go talk about why meditation is so important, because
Awesome.
it super is. I mean, if you're not, I mean, well, let's give a little taste. If you aren't meditating right now, what are you missing out on?
Oh, peace of mind, well-being, instant access to infinite wisdom. So many things. Yeah, I think for me, it began as like something that I was told was good for me, and I'm a good student and a rule follower, so I was like, okay, I'll do this, and then it became something that I knew I needed. Like I knew my nervous system needed the practice to be with my own self.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, some of the questions I'm going to ask you in a little bit, just to kind of as a little teaser for folks. I would like to know the difference between meditating in the morning, the afternoon, and the evening. I want to know why 5 minutes and why 15 minutes and why an hour long meditation. Mm-hmm. And just some of those kinds of questions that, like, I mean, I've heard them before, but it'd be great to hear from our resident meditation teacher here at the School of Bravery. That'd be great. And if you want access to that interview, then go to schoolofbravery.com/Kate, and there'll be a button that you can just click to say watch interview, and it'll be right there for you. So thank you so much, Kate, for being here with us and for being part of the school. It's been so cool to have you part, and like I said, we're big fan of you.
Yeah, thank you. Mutual, Emily. Yeah.